this upcoming Purim. Next week, right now, we're going to be reading our Megillas. And this feels like a really meaningful Purim, a significant Purim, because, the historic essence of Purim is the marking of a time in which the nation of Israel was facing an existential threat at the hands of a bloodthirsty, murderous people. It wasn't just Haman. It was Haman's people. He represented an entire people that were rooting him on. It's not just Sinwar or Chania. There's an entire Hamas. There's entire Iran. There's a bloodthirsty people that were just waiting to wipe out the nation of Israel. And the rest of the world either gave their thumbs up or just sat by without really a word to say. Maybe throwing an occasional sanction at Mordechai and Esther and the nation of Israel just for having the audacity to exist. Anyways, as we've said before, our sages tell us that the only reason that the book of Esther is included in the Tanakh, which, the Tanakh is the Torah and the prophets and the writings. The reason the book of Esther is in there as opposed to, let's say, the book of Maccabees, which is not included, that's in something called the Apocrypha, it's really outside of the Tanakh, is because a book is only included when its prophecy is relevant to the future and not just relegated to the past. And so the day will come when we realize how perfect the events in Persia thousands of years were ago, how perfect they were to lay the blueprint for the redemption in the end of days. But I've started thinking that the holiday of Purim is not just celebrated to give us an insight into how things will play out, in the final showdown, not just to ensure us that just as Haman was hanged on the very gallows that he had just built to hang Mordechai, not just to ensure us that the modern day Hamans, the modern day Irans, will be undone by the very plans that they're hatching to wipe out Israel. Perhaps it will be their own nukes that will somehow fall on their own heads. I've always felt like it may look something like that. But, in some ways, those thoughts are, assuring and strengthening. But I think that the Megillah doesn't only foreshadow the way things will play out, but perhaps even more importantly, it tells us how we should be approaching these challenging times. It tells us about our strengths and our weaknesses. And as we've learned before, we are facing Amalek today, just as we faced Amalek at the very beginning. It's not for nothing that Amalek is called the first of the nations. Reshit Amim, I think the words are. And Amalek has not really changed much. They have the same pure, unadulterated, genocidal goals and desires that they've always had, and they have the same exact grievances as well. So we know that Amalek's first attack on the nation was against the weak and the stragglers. This is such an important piece of Torah. We're going to do it again. Here's what it is. Deuteronomy 25, 17 through 18. Remember what Amalek did to you, by the way, when you came forth out of Egypt, how he met you by the way and struck at your rear, all who were weak behind you, when you were faint and weary. He did not fear God. And from this we learn that if we were really fully united as one people under Hashem's kingship, and our fear was of Hashem and not of Amalek, of this fearsome warrior nation Amalek, if we feared Hashem more than them, then there would have been no weak and weary straggling behind, because we would have gone as slow as we needed to go to make sure that the weak aren't falling behind us, but they're amongst us. They're in our midst. If that were the case, if we were united in love for each other and with faith in Hashem, we would have been invincible. And so we see the same attacks throughout history. Let's look at Purim, right? In his initial character assassination against the Jews to Achashverosh, Haman says that the Jews, let's look inside Esther chapter 3, verses 8 and 9. And Haman said to King Achashverosh, there is a certain nation who is mefuzar umeforad, scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. And their laws are different from those of every other people. And they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to tolerate them. If it please the king, let it be decreed that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those who have the charge of the business to bring it to the king's treasuries. So that's the accusation. We see that Haman uses the words that seem to be repetitive, even redundant, scattered and dispersed. Aren't those the same thing? And so I believe the teaching here, I couldn't find a source with such short time, but it was just from within me, but I'm sure I'm not the first. There's a teaching here that they are scattered geographically and dispersed. Mefurad in Hebrew, the word mefurad comes from perud, that they're divided spiritually and emotionally. They're divided in their hearts. Haman was saying that not only are we scattered throughout the kingdom geographically, but we are a divided people. And it seems that Haman was saying, he was trying to convey his hope and his faith that due to our scatteredness, and even more so our division within our hearts between each other, that we are weak and vulnerable and that we can be destroyed. Like Hamas now, it's not hopelessness that drives the jihad, that drives Hamas, that drives Iran. It's not hopelessness, it's hope. That's what Haman had then. He had hope that he could wipe out the nation of Israel. And the famous mitzvot that are built into the holiday of Purim are made exactly for the purpose of remedying this blemish in the nation. If we're spiritually vulnerable to Amalek when we are divided, then we are fortified, even invincible, right, when we're united. And that is why the commandment of Mishloach Manot, in which we are commanded, we have the mitzvah to give packages, gift packages. It seems trite, but it's really not. It's quite profound. These gift packages, all sorts of yummies and treats or fruits, if it was Tehilah's fruits and grains or whatever, organic stuff. That is what we give out on Purim. As a matter of fact, many people, myself actually included, have the custom to give these gifts as an opportunity to give those that we may have had some tension with throughout the year, and in order to restore love and harmony to strained relationships, right? To further unify the nation. That's what it's really about. And we also have the mitzvah of matanot levyonim, gifts to the poor, tzedakah, for exactly the same reason. Just as Amalek attacked those weakest that struggled in the back behind, those stragglers, the weak, on Purim, we search out those who are weakest and most vulnerable to hold them up and support them and defend them.